Commander Jinwoo stared at the glowing screens in front of him, his three eyes blinking in confusion. The bridge of his massive warship hummed quietly as dozens of crew members worked at their stations. For over 3,000 years, the Zephyrian hegemony had been the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. They knew every planet, every species, every tiny rock floating in space. "This cannot be right," Jinwoo muttered, his long fingers dancing across the control panel. The data streaming in from their sensors made no sense at all. Navigator Mirai approached from her station, her scaled skin shimmering under the ship's lights. She carried a data tablet that displayed readings from a small blue planet in the outer rim of the galaxy. "Commander, I have checked the numbers 3 times. The energy signatures coming from Earth are impossible." Jinwoo took the tablet and studied the information. According to their records, Earth was supposed to be home to primitive creatures who had barely learned to make tools. The last survey, conducted just 500 years ago, showed humans living in caves and hunting wild animals with spears. They were classified as a Level 1 civilization, meaning they posed no threat to anyone. But now the sensors were telling a completely different story. "Look at these readings," Mirai said, pointing at the screen. "Fusion reactors generating massive amounts of clean energy. Quantum drive signatures that suggest faster-than-light travel. Advanced communication networks spanning the entire planet. This technology is more advanced than what most of our client species possess." Jinwoo felt a chill run down his spine. The energy patterns looked familiar, almost like fingerprints he had seen before. They resembled Zephyrian technology, but that was impossible. The humans had never even left their solar system, according to all their intelligence reports. "Run a comparative analysis," he ordered. "Cross-reference these signatures with our own technological database." The ship's computer worked for several minutes, processing thousands of terabytes of data. When the results appeared on screen, Jinwoo's blood turned cold. The match was 97% accurate. Somehow, these primitive humans were using technology that was nearly identical to Zephyrian designs. Officer Seungmin hurried over from the communication station, his expression worried. "Sir, we are receiving transmissions from Earth. They appear to be in multiple languages, but some of the mathematical formulas they are using match our own scientific principles." Jinwoo began pacing back and forth across the bridge. His crew watched him nervously, knowing that their commander was deeply troubled by something. In all his years of service, Jinwoo had never encountered a situation like this. "How is this possible?" he asked aloud. "These humans should barely know how to make fire. Our last report showed them living in primitive settlements, struggling to grow basic crops. Now they have technology that rivals our own?" Mirai pulled up historical records on her screen. "According to our archives, Earth has been monitored for over 10,000 years. Every survey has shown steady but extremely slow progress. Stone tools, then bronze, then iron. They should not have reached this level of advancement for at least another 50,000 years." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Either their monitoring systems had failed catastrophically, or something very strange was happening on Earth. "Sir," called out Tactical Officer Kyu-hyun, "should we alert High Command about this anomaly?" Jinwoo considered the question carefully. If he reported impossible readings to his superiors, they might think his crew was incompetent, but if he ignored the situation and it turned out to be a real threat, the consequences could be even worse. "Not yet," he decided. "First, we need to understand what we are dealing with. Prepare the survey team for immediate deployment. We will investigate this personally." Mirai looked concerned. "Sir, if these humans have advanced technology, they might be dangerous. Should we not approach with caution?" Jinwoo laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Dangerous? They are still just humans. Even with advanced tools, they are no match for Zephyrian military might. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and enslaved countless species. What could these primitive creatures possibly do to us?" But even as he spoke these confident words, Jinwoo felt a nagging doubt in the back of his mind. Something about this situation felt wrong, like pieces of a puzzle that did not fit together properly. The technology signatures were too familiar, too perfect to be coincidental. "Set course for Earth," he commanded. "Maximum speed, I want answers and I want them now." As the massive Zephyrian warship changed direction and accelerated toward the small blue planet, none of the crew could have imagined that they were about to discover a truth that would shake the very foundations of their empire. Ambassador Do-Yun stood on the landing platform, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the massive alien ship slowly descend through Earth's atmosphere. The vessel was unlike anything most humans had ever seen, its dark metal hull gleaming with strange symbols and pulsing lights. But Do-Yun was not like most humans. He had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Around him, a dozen other human diplomats and scientists waited with remarkable composure. While any normal person might be trembling with fear at the sight of an alien warship, these individuals seemed almost relaxed. Some were even smiling softly, as if they were greeting old friends rather than potentially hostile extraterrestrials. Dr. Suman adjusted her translation device, though she knew she would not need it. Captain Minho checked his ceremonial uniform, one final time making sure every detail was perfect. They all understood the importance of this meeting. Everything they had worked toward for generations was about to come to fruition. The alien ship touched down with surprising gentleness, its massive landing legs extending to support its weight on the concrete platform. For several minutes nothing happened. Then, with a loud hissing sound, a ramp extended from the ship's belly and touched the ground. The first figure to emerge was clearly the leader. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in elaborate ceremonial armor that sparkled with embedded crystals. His skin was a pale blue-gray color, and most striking of all, he had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern on his face. Behind him came several other aliens, all wearing similar armor but with fewer decorations. Commander Jinwoo walked slowly down the ramp, his 3 eyes scanning the assembled humans with obvious confusion. According to every report in the Zephyrian database, these creatures should be cowering in terror or worshipping him as a god. Instead, they stood calmly, waiting for him to approach. "I am Commander Jinwoo of the Zephyrian hegemony," he announced in his own language, expecting the humans to look blank and confused. "You are more advanced than our records indicate." What happened next shocked him to his core. The human at the front of the group, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair, stepped forward and smiled warmly. "We have been expecting you." "For a very long time, Commander," Do-Yun said in perfect High Zephyrian, his accent flawless and his grammar impeccable. "Welcome home." Jinwoo stumbled backward, his 3 eyes widening in disbelief. High Zephyrian was not just any language. It was the ancient tongue of the royal court, known only to the highest levels of government and military command. No alien species had ever learned it because it was considered sacred and was never taught to outsiders. Navigator Mirai, who had accompanied Jinwoo to the surface, gasped audibly. The other Zephyrian officers looked at each other in confusion and growing alarm. This was impossible. These humans should not even know that their language existed, let alone speak it with such perfect fluency. "How do you know our tongue?" Jinwoo demanded, his voice rising with a mixture of anger and fear. "Who taught you the sacred words of our people?" Do-Hyun's smile grew wider, and there was something almost sad in his expression, as if he were looking at a lost child who had finally found his way home after many years of wandering. "Because, my distant cousin," he replied, still speaking in flawless High Zephyrian, "we never forgot where we came from." The words hit Jinwoo like a physical blow. Cousin? What could this primitive creature possibly mean by calling him cousin? The Zephyrians had no relatives among the lesser species of the galaxy. They were pure, untainted by contact with inferior beings. Dr. Suman stepped forward, carrying a small device that projected a holographic display into the air between the 2 groups. The image showed a star map of the galaxy, with various systems highlighted in different colors. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more comfortable setting," she suggested, also speaking in High Zephyrian. "We have much to discuss, and the truth we must share with you will take time to explain properly." Captain Minho nodded in agreement. "Your crew is welcome to remain with their ship, Commander. We understand that trust must be earned, not given freely. but we hope you will accept our invitation to learn about your true history." Jinwoo looked around at his officers, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. Every protocol they had learned, every procedure for dealing with primitive species, had just been thrown out the window. These humans were not primitive at all. They knew things that should have been impossible for them to know. "You speak of history," Jinwoo said slowly, his mind racing to process what was happening. "What history could you possibly know that we do not? The Zephyrian hegemony has kept perfect records for over 10,000 years. Do-hyun's expression grew more serious, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of ancient truths. "That is exactly the problem, Commander. Your records are not as complete as you believe. There are things your people chose to forget, stories they decided were too dangerous to remember. But we have remembered everything." Jinwoo's hands shook as he walked through the corridors of his flagship, his mind spinning from the encounter on Earth's surface. The human's words echoed in his thoughts like a haunting melody he could not escape. How could they speak High Zephyrian? How could they know things about Zephyrian history that even he did not understand? The ship's archive chamber was located deep in the vessel's core, protected by multiple layers of security that had not been breached in over 3,000 years. As Jinwoo approached the massive door, he hesitated. The records stored beyond this threshold were classified at the highest levels, sealed away for reasons that had been forgotten by most of his people. Navigator Mirai followed close behind, her scaled skin reflecting the dim lights of the corridor. She had served with Jinwoo for over 2 decades, and she had never seen him look so troubled. "Sir, are you certain about this?" she asked quietly. Accessing the forbidden archives without permission from High Command could result in serious consequences. Jinwoo placed his palm on the scanner, and the machine hummed as it read his genetic signature. "The humans knew things they should not know, Mirai. They spoke our sacred language as if they had been born to it. If there are answers to be found, they will be in these files." The massive door slid open with a deep rumbling sound, revealing a chamber filled with holographic storage units that stretched up toward the ceiling like glowing pillars. Each unit contained thousands of years of historical data, most of it locked away and forgotten. Jinwoo walked to the central terminal and began entering access codes that had been passed down through generations of military commanders. His fingers moved across the keypad with practiced precision, inputting sequences that had remained unchanged for millennia. The first files that appeared were routine historical records. Battle reports, colonization surveys, diplomatic agreements with various alien species. But as Jinwoo dug deeper into the archives, he began to find documents that made his blood run cold. "The Great Purge," he read aloud, from a file dated nearly 10,000 years ago. The words appeared in ancient High Zephyrian script, far older than anything he had seen before. "By order of Supreme Regent Vorthak, all heretics and political dissidents are to be eliminated from Zephyrian society." Mirai moved closer to read over his shoulder. "I have never heard of this event in any of our history lessons, sir." Jinwoo continued reading, his voice growing more tense with each line. "The rebels have spread dangerous ideas about equality among species and peaceful coexistence with alien races. Their poison threatens the purity of Zephyrian rule. All traces of their existence must be erased." The next section of the document contained lists of names, thousands upon thousands of Zephyrians who had been marked for execution. But what caught Jinwoo's attention were the final paragraphs of the report. "Despite our best efforts, several groups of heretics managed to escape the purge. Long-range sensors detected multiple ships launching from the outer colonies, heading toward the Galactic Rim. Pursuit vessels were dispatched, but the rebel ships were faster than anticipated." Jinwoo's hands began to shake more violently as he accessed the next file. This one contained detailed tracking data, showing the paths taken by the escaped ships as they fled Zephyrian space. "The last confirmed sighting of the rebel fleet was in Sector 7 Alpha," he read. "Their trajectory suggests they were heading toward unexplored systems in the outer rim. All ships were presumed destroyed when they failed to return or send communications." Mirai quickly accessed the navigation computer and began running calculations. Her 3 eyes widened as the results appeared on her screen. Sir, Earth's current location matches perfectly with the trajectory of those escape pods. If survivors reach that world and manage to land safely, Jinwoo felt the weight of the revelation crushing down on him like a collapsing star. He accessed more files, finding reports that had been buried so deeply that even he had needed special clearance to view them. The truth was worse than he had imagined. The escaped Zephyrians had been more than just political rebels. They had been scientists, philosophers, and engineers who believed that all intelligent species deserved freedom and respect. They had opposed the hegemony's policy of conquest and enslavement, arguing instead for peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. They were not heretics, Jinwoo whispered, his voice barely audible in the quiet chamber. They were idealists who wanted to build a better galaxy. More files revealed the true scope of the cover-up. The Zephyrian government had rewritten history, erasing all mention of the Purge and the escaped rebels. They had created false records showing that their rule had always been absolute and unchallenged. Sir, Mireille said, her voice trembling, if these records are accurate, then the humans on Earth are not primitive aliens at all. They are our own people, descendants of the Zephyrians who escaped the Purge 10,000 years ago. Jinwoo closed his eyes and tried to process the magnitude of what they had discovered. Everything he had been taught about Zephyrian history was a lie. The great empire he served had been built on genocide and deception. Then we have been ruling a galaxy while our own exiled children lived beneath our notice, he said grimly. And now they have returned. The implications were staggering. If the humans were truly descended from Zephyrian rebels, then they possessed not only the knowledge of their ancestors, but also 10,000 years of accumulated wisdom and experience. The conference room fell silent as Dr. Hyejin pressed a button on the control panel. The lights dimmed, and suddenly the entire room was filled with three-dimensional images that seemed to float in the air around them. Commander Jinwoo and his officers found themselves surrounded by scenes from ancient history that none of them had ever witnessed before. What you are about to see, Dr. Hyejin began, her voice calm but filled with emotion, is the true story of what happened 10,000 years ago. Your people have forgotten this history, but we never did. The first hologram showed the Zephyrian homeworld as it had existed millennia ago. But this was not the glorious civilization that Jinwoo had learned about in school. Instead, the images revealed a society torn apart by conflict and oppression. Massive cities sprawled across the planet's surface, but they were divided into distinct sections. The wealthy and powerful lived in towering spires that reached toward the sky, while the poor and dissatisfied were crowded into dark, cramped districts below. Your ancestors were not the heroes of this story, Dr. Hyejin continued. They were the oppressors. They ruled through fear and violence, enslaving entire populations and crushing anyone who dared to speak against them. Commander Jinwoo watched in horror as the holograms showed Zephyrian soldiers attacking peaceful protesters, burning libraries filled with forbidden books, and dragging families from their homes in the middle of the night. This was nothing like the noble history he had been taught as a child. Our people were the ones who stood up against this tyranny, Ambassador Do-hyun added, stepping forward to stand beside the floating images. They were scientists, teachers, artists, and ordinary citizens who believed that all intelligent beings deserved freedom and dignity. The next series of holograms showed the Great Purge in vivid detail. Jinwoo watched as his ancestors systematically hunted down and eliminated anyone who opposed their rule. But the most shocking images were yet to come. When it became clear that the Purge would succeed, our leaders made a desperate decision, Dr. Hyejin explained. They gathered as many people as they could save and launched them into space, hoping to find a new world where they could live in peace. The holograms showed ancient spacecraft, their hulls scarred and damaged, limping through the darkness of space. Inside these ships, Jinwoo could see thousands of Zephyrian refugees, including families with young children who looked terrified and confused. The journey was long and dangerous, Do-hyun said softly. Many ships were lost along the way, but some of us made it to a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. A world where primitive humans were just beginning to discover agriculture and build permanent settlements. The images changed to show the moment when the Zephyrian refugees first encountered early humans. Instead of conquering or enslaving these primitive beings, the refugees chose a different path. They integrated peacefully, sharing their knowledge while learning from the humans' natural resilience and adaptability. Over thousands of years, our two peoples became one, Dr. Hyejin continued. But we never forgot who we were or where we came from. Every generation passed down the stories, the language, and most importantly, the dream of one day returning to free the galaxy from tyranny. Jinwoo stared at images of ancient Zephyrian refugees working alongside primitive humans, teaching them advanced agriculture, medicine, and engineering. Gradually, over many generations, the two species had blended together, creating a hybrid, people who possess the best qualities of both races. You have been planning this return? Jinwoo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Every generation preserved the knowledge, Ambassador Doyen confirmed. While your empire built itself on conquest and oppression, we learned patience. We studied your weaknesses, your military strategies, your political systems, and most importantly, we have been quietly supporting resistance movements across your territories for centuries. Tactical Officer Sunho, who had been monitoring communications from the fleet, suddenly looked up from his console with alarm written across his face. Sir, he said urgently, I am receiving reports from across the galaxy. 17 different systems are reporting simultaneous uprisings. The rebel forces appear to be using advanced technology that matches our own military specifications. Hyejin smiled, but there was no malice in her expression. Not your technology, officer, ours. We are simply returning it to its rightful heirs. The holographic display changed once more, showing a real-time map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were lighting up in different colors, indicating active rebellion against Zephyrian rule. On each world, the local populations were rising up with weapons and technology that had been secretly provided by Earth. For centuries, we have been sending agents throughout your empire, Do-hyun explained. They posed as traders, diplomats, even refugees fleeing from other conflicts. But their real mission was to establish contact with oppressed populations and provide them with the tools they would need to fight for their freedom. Commander Jinwoo felt his entire worldview crumbling around him. Everything he had believed about his people's glorious history was a lie. The empire he had served his entire life was built on the bones of the innocent, and now those ancient victims were rising from the grave to claim their justice. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Dr. Hyejin turned off the holographic display, and the room returned to normal lighting. We want what our ancestors wanted 10,000 years ago, she said simply. Freedom for all intelligent beings, and an end to the age of oppression. The command center beneath Earth's surface buzzed with activity as hundreds of technicians worked at glowing control panels. Admiral Taehyung stood at the center of it all, his tall frame casting a shadow across the holographic displays that showed the entire galaxy. His face bore the unmistakable features of his Zephyrian ancestors, but his eyes held a warmth and compassion that had been absent from his species for thousands of years. Status report from the Andorian sector, called out Communications Officer G1 from her station. The uprising there has been successful. The local population has taken control of the orbital defense platforms and is requesting immediate humanitarian aid. Taehyung nodded, making notes on his personal tablet. Send medical supplies and food shipments immediately. Make sure they know we are here to help, not to conquer. All around the command center, similar reports were streaming in from across the galaxy. For the first time in 10,000 years, oppressed worlds were tasting freedom. Species that had been enslaved for generations were breaking their chains and establishing their own governments. Meanwhile, aboard Commander Jinwoo's flagship, the former Zephyrian leader sat in what had once been his own conference room, now serving as his prison. The irony was not lost on him. Through the large windows he could see Earth's blue surface below, so peaceful and beautiful that it was hard to believe it had become the center of a galactic revolution. You have destroyed everything we built, Jinwoo said bitterly as Admiral Taehyung entered the room. The human admiral moved with the grace and dignity that had once been the hallmark of Zephyrian nobility, but his manner was gentle rather than arrogant. Taehyung sat down across from his prisoner, his expression thoughtful rather than triumphant. "We have not destroyed anything of value, Commander. We have simply restored what your people stole from the galaxy long ago." As Taehyung spoke, Jinwoo could see the ancient Zephyrian features clearly visible beneath the human characteristics. The bone structure, the way he held his head, even the cadence of his speech, all marked him as a descendant of the royal bloodlines that had ruled the homeworld thousands of years ago. "Our ancestors dreamed of a galaxy where all species could live as equals," Taehyung continued. "Where knowledge would be shared freely, where trade would benefit everyone, where conflicts would be resolved through dialogue rather than violence. That dream never died, Commander. We simply carried it to a new world and nurtured it until it was strong enough to return." Through the ship's communication system, they could hear reports from across the galaxy. Navigator Mirai, who had defected to the human cause after learning the truth about her people's history, was coordinating with resistance movements on dozens of worlds. "The Vegan system has declared independence," she announced over the intercom. "They are requesting technical assistance to establish a new planetary government based on democratic principles. The mining colonies in the Rigel sector have also broken free from Zephyrian control," added another voice. "The workers there have formed a cooperative and are asking for help in establishing fair trade agreements." Jinwoo listened to these reports with growing amazement. Instead of the chaos and destruction he had expected, the liberated worlds were organizing themselves peacefully. They were not seeking revenge against their former oppressors, but rather focusing on building better societies for their children. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Without strong central authority, these worlds should be descending into anarchy and civil war." Taehyung smiled, and for a moment his expression was almost paternal. "That is what your people never understood. Commander, intelligent beings do not need to be ruled by force. When given the freedom to choose their own destiny, most species will choose cooperation over conflict, trade over theft, and peace over war." The door to the conference room opened, and Dr. Heejin entered carrying a stack of reports. Her face was bright with excitement as she shared the latest news from the liberation efforts. "Admiral, the response has been even better than we hoped," she said. "Former slave worlds are not only establishing their own governments, but they are also reaching out to help liberate their neighbors. The revolution is spreading faster than our most optimistic projections." She handed Taehyung a tablet, showing a real-time map of the galaxy. Green dots represented liberated worlds, while red dots showed systems still under Zephyrian control. The green was spreading rapidly like a healing infection that was curing the galaxy of its ancient disease. "The trading routes are opening up again," Dr. Heejin continued. "Species that have been isolated for centuries are making contact with each other. Scientific knowledge is being shared freely. We are already seeing technological advances that would have taken decades under the old system." Navigator Mirai's voice came over the intercom again, and this time there was joy in her tone. "Admiral, I have a message from the Centauri Alliance. They want to establish a formal diplomatic relationship with Earth and are offering to share their medical technology in exchange for our agricultural techniques." Taehyung turned back to Commander Jinwoo, who was staring out the window at the stars with a confused expression on his face. "This is not how conquests are supposed to work," Jinwoo said quietly. "Where are the occupation forces? Where are the revenge executions? Where is the punishment for those who serve the old regime?" "There will be no punishment, Commander," Taehyung replied gently. "Our goal was never revenge. It was freedom. Many of your people were simply following orders, just as you were. Now, they have the chance to choose a different path." Navigator Mirai entered the room, her scaled face glowing with happiness. She had spent most of her life serving an empire built on oppression, but now she was helping to build something beautiful and new. "The lost children have come home," she said quietly, looking out at the stars. "And they have brought freedom with them. The galaxy would never be the same. But for the first time in 10,000 years, that was a good thing."